Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of The Longing. Today we are going to continue to read Homer's Iliad. I will go back and check the room with the smashed glass, see if it has actually finished cracking like it said it would. I just kind of want to keep going with the book for now so it's not quite so broken up. So let's get going. Her speech new fury to their hearts conveyed, while near Tydides stood the Athenian maid. The king beside his panting steeds she found, o'erspent with toil reposing on the ground. To cool his glowing wound he sat apart, the wound inflicted by the Lycian dart. Large drops of sweat from all his limbs descend, beneath his ponderous shield his sinews bend, whose ample belt that o'er his shoulders lay, he eased and washed the clotted gore away. The goddess leaning o'er the bending yoke, beside his coursers thus her silence broke. Degenerate prince and not of Tydeus' kind, whose little body lodged a mighty mind. Foremost he pressed in glorious toils to share, and scarce refrained when I forbade the war. Alone and guarded once he dared to go, and feast encircled by the Theban foe. There braved and vanquished many a hardy knight. Such nerves I gave him, and such force in fight. Thou too no less hast been my constant care. Thy hands I armed, and sent thee forth to war. But thee or fear deters, or sloth detains. No drop of all thy father warms thy veins. The chief thus answered mild, Immortal maid, I own thy presence and confess thy aid. Not fear, thou know'st, withholds me from the plains, nor sloth hath seized me, but thy word restrains. From warring gods thou bad'st me turn my spear, and Venus only found resistance here. Hence, goddess, heedful of thy high commands, loth I gave way, and warned our Argive bands. For Mars the homicide these eyes beheld, with slaughter red and raging round the field. Then thus Minerva, brave Tydides, hear, not Mars himself, nor aught immortal fear. Full on the god impel thy foaming horse, Pallas commands, and Pallas lends thee force. Rash, furious, blind, from these to those he flies, and every side of wavering combat tries. Large promise makes, and breaks the promise made. Now gives the Grecians, now the Trojans aid. 159. She said, and to the steeds approaching near, drew from his seat the martial charioteer. The vigorous power the trembling car ascends, fierce for revenge, and Diomed attends. The groaning axle bent beneath the load, so great a hero and so great a god. She snatched the reins, she lashed with all her force, and full on Mars impelled the foaming horse. But first to hide her heavenly visage spread, black Orcus's helmet o'er her radiant head. Diomed casting his spear at Mars. Just then gigantic Periphas lay slain, the strongest warrior of the Ctolian train. The god who slew him leaves his prostrate prize, stretched where he fell, and at Tydides flies. Now rushing fierce in equal arms appear, the daring Greek, the dreadful god of war. Full at the chief above his courser's head, from Mars's arm the enormous weapon fled. Pallas opposed her hand, and caused to glance far from the car the strong immortal lance. Then through the force of Tydeus' warlike son, the javelin hissed, the goddess urged it on. Where the broad cincture girt his armour round, it pierced the god, his groin received the wound. From the rent skin the warrior tugs again, the smoking steel, Mars bellows with pain. Loud as the roar encountering armies yield, when shouting millions shake the thundering field. Both armies start and trembling gaze around, and earth and heaven rebellow to the sound. As vapours blown by Auster's sultry breath, pregnant with plagues and shedding deeds of death, beneath the rage of burning Sirius rise, choke the parched earth and blacken all the skies. In such a cloud the god from combat driven, high o'er the dusky whirlwind scales the heaven. Wild with his pain he sought the bright abodes, there sullen sat beneath the sire of gods, showed the celestial blood, and with a groan thus poured his plaints before the immortal throne. Can Jove supine flagitious facts survey, and brook the furies of this daring day? For mortal men celestial powers engage, and gods on gods exert eternal rage. From thee, O Father, all these ills we bear, and thy fell daughter with the shield and spear. Thou gavest what fury to the realms of light, pernicious wild, regardless of the right. All heaven beside reveres thy sovereign sway, thy voice we hear, and thy behests obey. 'Tis hers to offend, and even offending share, thy breast, thy counsels, thy distinguished care. So boundless she, and thou so partial grown, well may we deem the wondrous birth thy own. Now frantic Diomed at her command against the immortals lifts his raging hand. The heavenly Venus first his fury found, me next encountering, me he dared to wound. Vanquished I fled, even I the god of fight, from mortal madness scarce was saved by flight. Else hadst thou seen me sink on yonder plain, heaped round and heaving under loads of slain, or pierced with Grecian darts for ages lie, condemned to pain, though fated not to die. Him thus upbraiding with a wrathful look, the Lord of Thunders viewed and stern bespoke. To me perfidious this lamenting strain, of lawless force shall lawless Mars complain. Of all the gods who treated the spangled skies, thou most unjust, most odious in our eyes. In human discord is thy dire delight, the waste of slaughter and the rage of fight. No bounds, no law thy fiery temper quells, and all thy mother in thy soul rebels. In vain our threats, in vain our power we use. She gives the example, and her son pursues. Yet long the inflicted pangs thou shalt not mourn, sprung since thou art from Jove and heavenly born. Else singed with lightning hadst thou hence been thrown, where chained on burning rocks the Titans groan. Thus he who shakes Olympus with his nod, then gave to Paeon's care the bleeding god. 106. With gentle hand the balm he poured around, and healed the immortal flesh, and closed the wound. As when the figs press juice infused in cream, to curds coagulates the liquid stream. Sudden the fluids fix the parts combined, such and so soon the ethereal texture joined. Cleansed from the dust and gore fair Hebe dressed, his mighty limbs in an immortal vest. Glorious he sat, in majesty restored, fast by the throne of heaven's superior lord. Juno and Pallas mount the blessed abodes, their task performed, and mix among the gods. Juno. And with that, we're actually going to end that there, and we'll start the next part next time. Just because there's no point me starting to read this one, since we're so close to the end of the episode anyway. So, we do at some point need to go back, as has been mentioned in the comments of a previous video, and have a look at the cracked window, where behind which sits gold and treasure. But until we get there, I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.